Without further ado, take it away, Steve.
Well, thank you, Isaac, and thank you, Heartland, again for asking me to be on this panel. So I'm actually going to talk about draining the climate science swamp, not the policy swamp. I published Junk Science for a long time now. I take kind of a fundamentalist view of science. I don't know that everybody here will necessarily agree with me, but that's okay. All right, so I think the mission has already been accomplished because there is no science in climate science. I get particularly upset when I hear the term climate scientist. What is that? Okay, climate science. See, this is how on the left is how we normally do science, right? It's called the scientific method. We have a hypothesis. We figure out a way to test our hypothesis. We evaluate the hypothesis, which is usually not exactly what we predicted, and we go back to the beginning. That's how science is done. Okay. On the right is the climate science method. Okay, we start with, we've already made up our minds. How do we make the data fit what we've already decided? We announce the world is ending, and then we smear our critics. Now, is this not how it works? Okay? I mean, the climate science method is Michael Mann writ large, right? And everybody that works with him. Okay. Here we have Gavin Schmidt. I mean, this is what he considers to be science, just making predictions. Okay, I'll read that for you if you can't. What's the use of having developed a science well enough to make predictions if in the end all we're willing to do is stand around and wait for them to come true? Well, that's not how science works. We make the predictions and then we verify them and then we go back to the beginning, and it's a continual process. You know, science is not a one study, quick and dirty endeavor, but not if you're a government scientist. So there's no science going on in NOAA or NASA or EPA. There's no such thing as climate science because this is what it is to them, right? All they do is make predictions that go out to the year 2100, and we're supposed to, change our lifestyle, reduce our standard of living, completely change our political system for this. It's crazy. Now, this has been very expensive. Here we have President Obama talking about how sea level rise is going to cost us $200 billion by the year 2100. I guess that's the biggest number he could come up with for that. But I don't expect you to, I don't know if you can read this graph. So this is how much money we were spending on climate since between 1998 and the stimulus. We were bumping along at $5 to $7 billion, and all of a sudden stimulus comes along and climate spending goes up to $40 billion. And then, during the second term of Obama, if you read the bottom line there, we're spending, on average, $21 billion per year on climate science. Well, if you add all this up, it comes to about $200 billion. So he's worried about losing $200 billion because of sea level rise by 20. We've already wasted that, and we haven't even done anything. And then, as many of you know, I worked in the coal industry for a number of years, and my boss was Bob Murray, who's the CEO of the largest privately held coal company in America. And he told Neil Cavuto last year that, the Obama war on coal destroyed 94% of the market value of U.S. coal companies. They went from, $69 billion down to less than $5 billion. And that is the Obama war on coal. A lot of people think, it's because natural gas came on and fracking and a glut of natural gas. That's false, okay? It was the war on coal. Obama made the glut on natural gas worse because he would not allow it to be exported. They slow-walked all the export terminals. Even so, natural gas only became cost competitive with coal. I think coal is still a little cheaper. But you had the Obama war on coal regulations sitting on top of every utility in this country. So if they had an opportunity to switch out of coal into natural gas, they did. Okay, and this is the result. So it's more than just, the money we've wasted in federal budgetary outlays. It's also the real costs, and the coal industry has borne the brunt of that so far. So what have we learned from, the $200 billion we spent on climate so far? Well, we've learned nothing. Can anyone list an accomplishment of the climate science community? No. They've severely damaged the practice and reputation of science. No one knows what science is anymore. Okay, everyone calls them climate scientists. They're not scientists. It's not science. Even I slip into it because what else do you call them? The environment is not cleaner. Okay? We're burning slightly less coal. The environment is not cleaner. The public is not healthier. We have accomplished nothing. We've had just job losses. You know, coal mining communities, there's nothing else to do in those. If they can't mine coal, there's nothing else for them to do. Okay? They can't even move out of there. Who are you going to sell your house to? Because your neighbor, he's lost his job too. No one can buy your house. Okay? The destruction of wealth, just wasted money. It's been a total loss. So how are we going to fix this? Okay? Well, as I said, I'm a fundamentalist. Not everyone's going to agree with me on this, but that's okay. I'm open-minded. I think government needs to get out of science. I think government has perverted science. And I appreciate that. Okay, so so we have this history of junk science, which for those of you who don't know, junk science is bad science used to advance an agenda. We've had failure. You know, a lot of people like to say, well, you know, they confuse science with the accomplishment of the moonshot or the Manhattan Project. You know, we just need a Manhattan Project to fix the climate. Well, you know, the Manhattan Project and the moonshot were both, you know, very well-defined engineering projects, development of technology. You know, we had a problem and we solved it. That's engineering. That is not science. Okay? So don't let anyone confuse you that because we were able to blow up, you know, 2 Japanese cities that, you know, we can somehow create, you know, unicorn farts and turn it into energy. This is not possible, okay? Government has politicized science, right? It's totally politicized science. And it's expensive and it's produced no benefits, okay? And here, this is a recent article in USA Today. And this is a swipe at Trump because Trump is trying to cut the federal budget. We're scaring off future Einsteins. Okay, well, let's just stop and think about this for a second. Einstein did his best work when he was a Swiss patent clerk. He did it on his own dime. He came out of his own mind. There was no government grant involved. There were no politics involved. It was just pure science. Okay, so here's some of my ideas. You know, if science is going to survive in the government, it probably will to some extent. You know, the government's got to stop funding science projects where you can't confirm the hypothesis. You know, if you're going to say, well, the temperature is going to be 4 degrees Celsius warmer in 2100, well, that's not really confirmable because no one's going to be alive to see that. It's not meaningful. It's just a waste of time. Paleo studies, you recognize the hockey stick. I mean, this stuff is ridiculous. Okay, it's not science. You can't confirm it. You can't go back and verify, you know, your claims are true. There's just no way. Why is the government it has no value. Why is the government spending money on this? The last part there is if a model is not testable in a reasonable time frame, why are we spending money on this? Data. You know, I work with statisticians all the time. And the problem with statisticians is all they care about is having a mass of something they call data. But you have to be more discerning about it. How good is this really data? Does it really mean anything? Now, one of the problems, and Lamar Smith talked about this yesterday, although not enough, with his Honest bill, is this problem of secret data. Now, this has been mostly a problem at EPA. You know, EPA, in my talk yesterday, I talked about how EPA has used particulate matter to destroy the coal industry in the war on coal. It's actually how Obama has justified his global warming rules. It's not based on CO2, it's based on PM 2.5. All done with secret data. Data that no one has seen for more than 20 years. Data that, and Representative Smith underplayed this yesterday, he subpoenaed EPA for this data, and the EPA told him to go take a hike. And he's not the first chairman that EPA has said that to. And of course, this is also a problem in the hockey stick. It gave rise to ClimateGate, the secrecy of the models and the data. We have manipulated data. All the surface temperature data is manipulated because, as Anthony Watts has shown, you know, a lot of the temperature stations are in areas where they're artificially warmed by the heat island effect. You know, airports, rooftops, asphalt surfaces. And so, somehow we're manipulating the data and we think we're creating science. We have manufactured data. This chart here, I don't know if you can see it. This is from Tony Heller, who runs the Real Climate Science blog. And, so we're claiming record temperatures for areas in the gray there where there's no thermometer. We're just making it up. Okay, it's totally manufactured data. We have incomplete data that we rely on. I mean, I think all the temperature data is incomplete. I mean, the notion that, if someone sticks a thermometer and you take your body temperature, at least your body is a small, well-defined entity that you can have a meaningful result from. But average global temperature, what does that mean? Where is that? Who lives there? Nobody. And then we have the last point, precision to 1/100th of a degree centigrade. Okay? Well, if you go on Anthony Watt's site, he's got some great charts there about there's only 8% of NOAA weather stations are accurate to within 1/10 of a degree centigrade. Okay. One degree, that's what it was, 1 degree. Okay, so, but we have accuracy to 0.01. I mean, that's just basic. Everyone knows, everyone who took a statistics or mathematics, they know that's not significant. You can't do that, but NOAA does. Peer review. Okay, I hate peer review. Okay, because there's no such thing. Okay, it's power review, right? You get your friends and in the climate science community, that's what ClimateGate was all about, how they arranged power review. A lot of times it's just rubber stamping. These peer review jobs, they can be honorary, right? I'm associated with this journal, and so they send you the manuscript, you read through it, boom, done. It's ideological proofreading. That happens, of course, that was ClimateGate also. I think, we don't need peer review anymore. We have the internet. You can just put a study up there, let people comment who are interested and experts, okay? Let people have at it. We need to revamp cost-benefit analysis. This is more of a policy thing rather than science, but there is a science angle, and it's the benefits. First off, cost-benefit analysis must be mandatory for everything we do. The benefits must be real, okay? And, my particularly bugaboo is EPA and particulate matter, and its claim that 1 out of 4 American deaths is due to outdoor air, okay? This is completely made up, imaginary. There are no, but these benefits, since EPA values every life lost at $9 million, if you're saying that 1 out of 4 deaths is caused by air pollution, and every life is worth $9 million, even if you're 99 years old and you have 2 days to live, and EPA says you died because of air pollution, your life is worth $9 million. It's crazy. But this is how EPA calculates benefits. Of course, there's no industry. You could, for EPA's war on coal, coal's contribution to the GDP is not 20% of what EPA says the value of its PM rules are. So you might as well just get rid of the coal industry according to EPA rationale, and and we'd be making money. Okay, we'd have a positive effect on the GDP. I guess the last thing, and costs. Okay, when government does cost-benefit analysis, they tend to think of costs only in terms of compliance. How much will it cost to satisfy this regulation? Well, of course, that's wrong, okay? Because there are opportunity costs. The way the Clean Air Act operates, we set these ambient air standards for states, and if the states don't meet them, then they get penalized. Well, so to avoid being penalized, what do? They turn down economic opportunities. No, you can't build that factory, okay? These are real economic costs, job losses, lost wealth, okay? My last point here is social cost of carbon. Now, I've heard people talk in this conference about social cost of carbon and what the right discount rate should be. There is no social cost of carbon, right? There is no social cost of carbon. Without fossil fuels, our society stops. There's nothing that you can't build a windmill without CO2. You can't build a solar panel without. You can't do anything. I mean, only the Aboriginals live without carbon. And even they have fires, right? So there's no such thing. Nothing happens. There's no such thing. I don't want to hear about this discount rate anymore. It's ridiculous. This should not exist anywhere. Okay? Now, some of this stuff is going to get through. There's no question about that. It always does. How do we stop it? Well, when we have major regulations, Congress there's a whole body of libertarian thought that, Congress has unconstitutionally delegated its authority to agencies like EPA, who now make laws for us. Even though they're regulators, they're not lawmakers. So, and this is not a new thought, we ought to have Congress approve all major regulations. Well, right now we have this Congressional Review Act, which, Congress has to jump through hoops if it wants to overturn a recent regulation, but that's not good enough. Any regulation where there's a significant social or economic cost, Congress must affirmatively approve it. We need to put politicians, make them, stand up for what they believe. We need to improve judicial review of science. We need to make it possible. Supreme Court nominee Gorsuch, he's big on this case, NRDC versus Chevron, Supreme Court case 1984, basically gave agencies like EPA carte blanche to do whatever they want. EPA can use the worst science in the world as long as they put it on the record and it seems plausible, it's going to pass judicial muster. That's got to stop. We need to make it possible to go in and litigate every bit of science. And I don't care how long it takes. The reason they amended the Clean Air Act in 1990 was because industry was successfully challenging EPA junk science in court. So what they did by passing the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990 was remove science from the Clean Air Act. Okay? And that has been nothing but negative. In civil courts, in federal courts, they have these things called Daubert panels, where a judge, if there's a technical issue, a judge can impanel scientists and listen to their advice. So there is a way to do this. Okay, so let's get into some specific ideas. Myron will talk about this more, I think. EPA, we need to get rid of the Clean Power Plan. We need to repeal all the Obama-Warren coal rules, even though a lot of damage has already been done. We need to eliminate the endangerment finding. Okay, that is the most important thing anybody in this room can tell the Trump administration right now. The endangerment finding must go. Okay, Congress must get in the act too. I know these guys, they're all cowards. They don't want to get involved. They have got to make clear that EPA does not have authority under the Clean Air Act to regulate carbon dioxide. They need to overrule the, terrible decision in Massachusetts versus EPA, which was made in 2007 at the height of global warming hysteria. The world has changed. We have a lot more data. And we're going to talk about some other issues later, but we have a lot more data. That decision was just made in haste. Okay, so these are just some of the agencies that have climate funding. All the climate funding should be cut. I think the Trump administration has tried to do that, but of course, the swamp is fighting back. The Trump administration tried to cut the climate funding from NASA and its Earth Sciences budget, and I think maybe some of it was cut, but it largely came back because the swamp fights back, and you've got to be vigilant. U.S. Global Change Research Project. This is sort of almost the U.S. equivalent of the ICCC in some ways. Started by George Bush in 1989, like all bad environmental ideas that come from Republicans. Mandated by law in 1990. You have those 13 federal agencies. They periodically issue dramatic climate reports. There's one pending, and the Obama administration was worried that that President Trump would just get rid of the whole program, so they accelerated the draft, which is supposed to come out in 2018. So that's another thing the Trump administration has to deal with. They spend $2.8 billion a year. It's a total waste. Okay, I mean, there's no research going. The research is they do book reports, right? It's kind of like the ICCC. It's just a book report. There's no science. To call it science is ridiculous. Of course, we have to get out of the UN, right? Get out of the UN, Clean Climate Fund. We need to leave the IPCC, and we need to get out of the UN framework on climate change, the 1992 treaty. Now, the Trump administration is considering getting out of Paris, but I think other people have said during the conference, if we get out of UNFCCC, we get out faster, it's complete, and we don't have to pay any money to the UN. What else we got here? Oh, yeah. This will warm Chris Horner's heart wherever he is. Forensics on where all the money has gone. We spent $200 billion. We have nothing to show for it. Nothing. It's just been a waste. Now, Chris has, I've done some of this too, this email, looking at the emails. We need to get all the emails, if they still exist. For example, at EPA, after the election, EPA started redoing its website. Well, you can bet a lot of stuff has been lost, a lot of data. ClimateGate, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, and I know Tony Heller's not here, but I know he's probably watching online someplace. Tony Heller ought to be hired at NOAA to do a data audit of all their temperature data, right? All right, so we need to establish rules for doing science, because apparently, government science apparently don't know what science is anymore. We need to take away the money, get rid of the authority. We need to stop playing along with these people and do the autopsy. And just in closing, I think that, I'm very pleased with the OMB Director Mulvaney. He says that spending money on climate, we consider that to be a waste of your money, and no truer words have been spoken. Thank you.